Hi, my name is Calvin Brooks. For 13 years, I quietly supported my son Logan from the shadows, designing his future, paying for his school, and believing that love didn't need to shout. But on his birthday, he called another man dad and introduced me as mom's ex-husband. I stared at the envelope like it was a bomb, not because of what it might contain, but because of what it didn't. There was no return address, just gold lettering on ivory stock. Inside, I already knew what I'd find. The card was thick, expensive, coated in a soft matte finish. Aaron had always liked things to look perfect from the outside. The front read, "You're invited Logan's 10th birthday celebration," and below that in smaller cursive, "With love from your family, Richard, Aaron, and Logan." No dad, no Calvin. Just that final line, a surgical cut through everything I once was. I placed the invitation back on the table and walked to the window. The skyline was flat tonight, cold. Like the apartment, white walls, black steel counters, one fork in the sink, one plate, one cup. I hadn't decorated since moving in. It had been 3 years since the divorce, 2 since Logan stopped calling me dad without hesitation. Back then, I was the one who built his treehouse, who took him to the museum and pointed at the intricate beams on the ceiling, teaching him how tension and compression work together to hold everything up. We used to build bridges from popsicle sticks. Now he was building memories with someone else. I sat down at my desk and opened an old folder from the bottom drawer. Inside, yellowed photographs, Logan on his 4th birthday, frosting on his nose, reaching for me with frosting sticky fingers. Aaron caught in the background laughing. Another Logan on my shoulders at the park, his hands in my hair. The skyline of Chicago behind us, back when I mattered. I closed the folder slowly. My eyes burned, but I didn't blink. By 7:30, I was already in the car. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. There was no one left to tell. The route was muscle memory, Lakeshore Drive, then north past the ivy-walled campus of Loyola, up into the suburban folds where the trees got wider, the sidewalks cleaner, and the houses had names instead of numbers. Their new home sat behind a white gate. The lawn looked like a brochure, perfectly trimmed garden lights casting soft glows across the hedges. I didn't park, just idled across the street, watching. The porch light clicked on. The front door opened. Richard stepped out first, confident stride, expensive haircut, the faint glint of a cufflink as he adjusted his sleeve. Logan followed, bouncing, laughing. He looked taller. His hair was neater. They walked together toward the side garden. I watched as Richard pointed at something in the flower bed, and Logan crouched beside him, curious, attentive. A long time ago, that used to be me. I stayed until the porch light turned off. Back home, the apartment welcomed me with the same silence it always did. I dropped my keys in the bowl, took off my jacket, let the silence fill the space I once called a life. The television blinked, still on. Some late-night news recap. I didn't listen. I sat on the edge of the couch, remote in hand, and stared at the black screen after it shut off. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Logan's name, hit call, 1 ring, 2, voicemail. I didn't leave a message, just sat there staring at the call log. The last time we spoke was nearly 2 months ago, before Erin started screening everything, before her handwritten note on the back of the invitation, "Please respect our boundaries." I walked to the bedroom, pulled open the drawer beneath the nightstand. Inside, a thick envelope marked Logan, 25. I unfolded the document. There it was, the trust fund I'd set up in Logan's name. Part of my company shares a savings portfolio, real estate interests from a development project in Milwaukee, all waiting for him when he turned 25. At the bottom, in my own handwriting, the note I'd added when he was 7, "For my son, who will always know where he came from." The words sat like stone in my chest. I folded the letter back and returned it to the envelope, then sat in the dark listening to the hum of the city. He used to know. He always knew where he came from. But now, does he even remember who I am? The laughter was real. The seat reserved for me. Not so much. Mr. Brooks. The hostess blinked at the tablet in her hand, tapping the screen. Her smile held, but only just. "I'm sorry, I don't see your name on the list." I kept my tone even. There should be a Calvin Brooks. "Father of the birthday boy." She scanned again. Still nothing. "I'll check with Mrs. Cunningham. She vanished into the crowd of linen and laughter. Beyond the gate, the backyard unfolded like a spread in a lifestyle magazine. Manicured hedges, gold balloons tied in sets of three, a long table draped in ivory cloth with polished silverware and glass centerpieces. Waiters moved like choreography trays in hand. I stayed by the entrance. 5 minutes later, she returned with a tight smile. Right this way. I followed her past a dozen guests, women in pastel dresses, men in button-downs, the kind of crowd that knew which wine glass went with what. None of them looked familiar, none looked my way. At the far end, tucked beside the outdoor prep station, a small circular table sat near the kitchen tent, a view of the dumpsters. "Here you are," she chirped. I nodded, sat down. The chair wobbled slightly. At the main table, Logan sat between Aaron and Richard. He was wearing a navy vest, his tie slightly crooked, eyes scanning the guests, uncertain flickering. Aaron leaned over and fixed the tie with a smile. Richard ruffled Logan's hair. I reached for the water glass in front of me and held it in midair, not drinking, not setting it down. Just watching. Dinner was served. Toast began. Chatter rose and fell like waves. My name wasn't mentioned once. Then came the speech. Richard stood, wineglass in hand. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Logan, an extraordinary boy who brings light into our lives every day." He smiled toward the main table. "Being part of his journey has been the greatest privilege of my life. I'm proud to stand here, not just as a man in his life, but as a father." The guests applauded. My fingers tightened slightly around the glass. Still no reaction from me. Just a faint nod, as if I were hearing someone else's name. Erin glanced over. Our eyes met. She looked away. The cake arrived, 3 layers of blue and white with plastic dinosaurs climbing down frosting cliffs. Logan blew out the candles. Everyone cheered. Music resumed. I stood, walked slowly toward the edge of the crowd, weaving through the photo zone and the gift table. Nobody stopped me. To them, I was just another blurred face in the periphery. Near the bar, I spotted Erin alone, sipping from a flute of champagne. She noticed me. Didn't flinch. "Nice speech," I said mildly. "That was Richard," she replied, then paused. "You shouldn't have come unannounced. I was invited. You know what I mean." She took another sip. "Logan doesn't call you dad anymore. Don't make this harder for him." I tilted my head. "Is that what I'm doing?" She hesitated. I looked past her toward Logan, now posing for photos next to Richard. His smile was wide, but his posture was stiff, like he'd been told how to stand. "I'm not here to make anything harder," I said quietly. "Just taking in the view." She turned away, walked back toward the center of the party. I stayed where I was, hands in my pockets. The music pulsed through the patio speakers, cheerful and hollow. The lights glowed gold, but felt cold. Richard clinked glasses with another guest. A few more pictures, more poses. Logan's smile held, but his eyes kept darting, as if looking for something outside the frame. I watched until the photo op ended, walked back to my corner table. No one noticed. That was fine. At some point, a young waiter came by and cleared the unused plates around me. "Didn't get a chance to eat?" he asked politely. "Not hungry," I said. He nodded, not unky. The crowd began to thin around 9. I stood again and stepping quietly toward the house. I knew this place, every stone, every window pane. The overhang above the patio had been my design. That custom beam in the kitchen, the cedar support with the hidden joint system, mine. 3 years ago, this house was just blueprints on my desk. A dream I built for a family I thought would last. I stood under the arch I once sketched by hand, watching Logan through the glass door. He was seated opening a gift, a small mechanical set. Something he used to love. He looked up suddenly, eyes scanning the room. He didn't see me, but I saw the pause in his movement. A brief flicker of recognition, doubt. Then Richard called his name. Logan turned back. I stepped away from the door, walked slowly back to my car. No one stopped me. The gate clicked shut behind me, the laughter growing faint behind its polished iron bars. I opened the car door, sat down, turned the engine without driving off. This wasn't just a party. This was a plan, a strategy, a public rebranding of what family meant, one where I had no place, where my seat was behind the kitchen tent near the trash bins. I looked once more at the house. You erased me today. But you forgot one thing. I designed this house. Some men shout, some men sue. I draw a new blueprint. That's always been my answer to pain. Build something better. When my marriage crumbled, I didn't argue. I redesigned my life around weekends and summer holidays. When Logan started calling Richard Dad, I didn't scream. I waited. But this time, I wouldn't just wait. Late night. The street outside my old office was silent, save for the occasional hum of a passing car. The for-lease sign still hung crooked on the frosted glass door, but I still had the key. Inside, everything was covered in dust. The air carried a faint scent of cedar and printer toner, memories long sealed in paper. I moved straight to the old safe hidden behind the bookshelf, unlocked it with muscle memory, and pulled out a folder labeled simply L.B. Logan Brooks. Inside, architectural blueprints for the house I'd built when he was born, financial documents for the trust fund, and a stack of signed powers of attorney never revoked, only forgotten. This wasn't nostalgia. It was infrastructure. The next day, I met Sarah Finn at our usual spot, a quiet cafe near the university. She was already waiting with a manila envelope and that familiar raised brow that said, "You're late. Again." I looked into it, she said, sliding the folder across the table. "You were right to worry. Aaron and Richard are attempting to revise Logan's trust documents. They've filed paperwork claiming Logan's current guardian should have full financial oversight." "Richard?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Filed under step-parent responsibility clauses," she confirmed. "It won't go through. Not unless someone stays silent." I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at the blueprint I'd brought, our old house section by section. The family room where Logan took his first steps. The study I left behind. I'd built it all, but now it was being used against me. "Calvin," Sarah said, her tone softening. "You want a hearing?" I closed the folder. "No," I said. "I want to win without raising scaffolding." That night, I returned home and pulled out a dusty box from my closet. Inside, my old camera back when film mattered. I charged the battery, inserted the card. The last video, Logan, age 6, sitting at the edge of my drafting table. "Dad," he'd said with pride, "when I grow up, I want to build stuff just like you." I watched it twice. Then I backed it up to 3 drives. "Richard thinks this is about custody or pride. Let him. Let's see how well he handles a real foundation audit. Because the house he's sitting in, I designed every single wall. Every performance begins with a script. And today I found Richard's first draft. The school wasn't expecting me. When I asked to see Logan's file, the principal hesitated. "We'd usually require the current primary guardian's approval," she said carefully. I handed over the original custody order. Still signed. Still valid. She blinked. "One moment, Mr. Brooks." Logan's records weren't just academic, they told a quiet story. Counseling notes, teacher observations, internal flags. One line repeated itself through multiple school years. Logan expressed wanting to reconnect with his father. But each time the note ended, the same way step-parent informed. Issue closed. I stared at the ink. My name never came up. Richard had intercepted it all. Across town, Sarah waited with a thicker folder than before. "You'll want to sit for this," she said. Inside were donor records pulled from the private fundraising council Richard chaired. He'd built a persona, a selfless stepfather raising a boy abandoned by his birth dad. His speeches online, his quotes cited in parenting blogs, his signature on grant applications totaling over $80,000 in sponsorships and perks. All under the branding, "Fathers Who Step In." I checked the legal trail, Sarah added. Logan's name is used in 6 out of 10 applications. Photos included. "Without your consent." "Or his," I muttered. That night I dug through the archive box once more. Near the bottom I found an original blueprint of the house. Across the bottom in small firm print, "Designed for Logan from Dad." I rolled it up carefully, slid it into a tube. The past wasn't nostalgia anymore. It was evidence. This wasn't just about being erased from Logan's life. It was about Richard staging a story where I never existed, because that story paid well in reputation and influence. And Logan just a character in his father-in-law's performance. The pieces were now in front of me. Logan's silenced requests, Richard's fabricated sainthood, the misuse of trust and titles. Time to pin them all to the board and redesign what this stage looks like. They thought they had built a legacy, but I was the blueprint they stole from. It was the annual fundraising gala for Lakeside Academy, the kind of event with champagne pyramids, white linens, and smiles rehearsed down to the jawline. Richard, of course, was the guest of honor, an exemplary parent, the invitation read. His devotion to Logan has inspired us all. Inspiration. That was the word they used. So I sent them mine. 2 hours before the event began, a sealed envelope arrived at the hands of the event coordinator. Inside, a copy of the original house blueprint, the trust deed for Logan's future, and a note written in clean block letters for Logan. From his father. May he always know who built the ground beneath him. No accusations, no threats. Just truth rendered in ink and intention. Richard was mid-speech, basking in a wash of lights and applause. And when Logan came into my life, he said, voice trembling with performative weight, I knew I had to step up, not just as a stepfather, but as the father he deserved. Applause again. Until the moderator interrupted. We'd also like to recognize someone else, a man whose work quite literally laid the foundation for this community. She cleared her throat, reading from the note. To the original architect of the Lakeside Estates and the man who founded the Logan Brooks Trust at birth, Mr. Calvin Brooks. Heads turned. Mine stayed still. But I stood, not for drama, not to reclaim a spotlight, just to remind them gently of the truth beneath the stage. I walked to the side table near the silent auction, unrolled the blueprint in full view. At the corner of the page, clearly etched in faded black, designed for Logan from Dad. I placed it carefully beside a crystal sculpture of the school's crest, then returned to my seat. Richard tried to recover. We're all here for Logan, past, present, and future. He improvised, his smile thin and panicked. But the spell was broken, guests whispered. A journalist leaned toward me. You're Logan's biological father. I'm his father, I replied. Calm, without rush. A flash bulb went off. Erin didn't speak. Her eyes, caught between guilt and disbelief, followed me with the kind of silence that says everything too late. For the rest of the evening, no one approached Richard, but 2 trustees came to shake my hand. The curtain hadn't fallen yet, but for Richard, the lights had already dimmed. They erased me from their story, so I rewrote the ending. 1 week had passed since the auction. The press hadn't printed much, only murmurs of a quiet man reclaiming a title no one had the right to take. But the real work was silent. It began and ended with paper. Sarah slid the final file across the polished wood of her desk. Everything's in place, she said. They can't dispute what's never belonged to them. Inside records of tuition payments, tax contributions, and signed authorizations from years past, all with my name. Never flaunted, just filed. Erin had removed me from Logan's visible world, but I'd never stepped away from the foundations. Later that afternoon, Sarah delivered our petition to the family court. Not to sue for custody, not to demand recognition, but to confirm one fact under law: I remain the legal grantor of Logan's Education Trust and founding guardian of all assets listed under his name. Let them call him Stepfather. I had paperwork. The next morning, I transferred the last of the funds from the Brooks Family Trust into a new nonprofit designed for Logan, a scholarship foundation for fatherless students in architectural studies. Richard's name was removed from all documents. He had no legal standing, no trail to follow. His lawyer tried to respond, but as Sarah pointed out, he never put in a dime. It ended with a meeting in the park. Just me and Logan, no cameras, no declarations. He sat across from me on the bench, older than I remembered, but still with the same frown he wore when trying to solve puzzles as a kid. I'm not here to ask for anything, I said. I just wanted you to know what I've built. If you ever want to use it, it's yours. No pressure, no expectations. He didn't speak. I reached into my bag and handed him a frame. Inside was the first drawing he ever gave me, crayons on copy paper. A house with crooked windows and 3 stick figures. One labeled Dad. At the bottom I had inscribed, never forget who believed in you first. I stood up to leave. His hands clenched the frame. Still no words, but I didn't need them. This was never about reclaiming. It was about returning the choice. A week later, the court mailed its decision. No child support was required, but I was affirmed as the legal steward of Logan's trust and retained discretion over all associated assets. Richard and Erin. They remained silent. That night, an email came through. No name, just a subject line. Hey, can we talk again sometime? The sender address Logan.Brooks, Generation. The foundation was still standing, and maybe, just maybe, he was ready to walk back across it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.